we are back with the second and final part of this series of the RM125 bike flip. My goal in this video is to finally finish this bike, make it look really good, and finally get it sold for a profit. Now I have the pressure washer out right there, and the first important thing I want to do is get a deep clean on this bike and get it as clean as possible. Now right here I have some aluminum brightener, and I also bought some Prime MX pads, which I heard work really well on brightening up parts like the radiators, pipes, swing arm, and wheels. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so now that I have this bike fully deep cleaned and torn down with all the plastics off, I can finally brighten up some of the parts like the pipe, the wheels, and the radiators, and just make the bike shine a little more. And after that, I'll be able to mask this section off of the frame and touch it up with some paint. So let's go ahead and get started with that. I also used the pads to restore the muffler. I went ahead and buffed it, and I also torched it. And after seeing how that came out, I went ahead and also did the same thing for the main pipe. Alright, so now that we have all of that out of the way, the next thing I want to do is wet sand this rust and put new paint. I picked up some metallic paint that will hopefully match this frame. I'm going to wet sand this section of the frame with the rust and apply a new paint coat on it. And I want to do this for both sides of the frame, since both sides have a bunch of scuffing, which was most likely caused by just boots rubbing against the frame. So let's get to sanding. And now while I have that drying, I'm gonna move up to the bars and get these also torn off and repainted. Now, unlike the frame, for the bars here, I'm actually going to be using some paint stripper, and this stuff will make it a lot easier to get rid of all of this old paint and get down to the bare metal. And 15 minutes later, I could easily brush this paint off with the wire brush. And a few days later, the paint is fully dry and I'm ready to install these bars back onto the bike. And while I was at it, I decided to change out the old levers for some new ones. After buffing and torching the muffler, I also decided to repack it with some new packing material. And one last final thing I decided to do is to put on some new vent line for the carburetor, since the old vent lines were pretty disgusting and worn out. Lastly, I can put on the gas tank and the exhaust system, and I can finally start getting those new plastics on. Now for the front end, I got RMZ plastics, and the new RMZ color is a little bit lighter than the old RM color. I also made a template on where to drill new holes to make this fender fit. And after getting all of that installed, we finally finished this build and this bike is ready to be sold. And man, does this thing look good. I listed it on Marketplace for $2,900, and 2 weeks later, I had a buyer come check it out. He liked it, we signed the paperwork, and I sold it to him for $2,400. And with all of the expenses in mind, I was able to profit an easy $600 on this build. So considering that was my first bike flip, I would call that a success. And during these few months, I also flipped a CR85 build for $900 profit. Now I have more bike flips and content about the e-bike and CRF coming out soon, so stay tuned for that and I'll see you guys in the next one.